Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to wake up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hajavandi and Corey Clark.
What is up? Welcome to the program. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. The show is brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. I'm Aslan. Corey Clark also joining me, as most usual is the case. That was a really bad way to get out the gates, but let's just go. Let's just roll with it. Corey, how are you, friend?
I'm good, buddy, as is usual, mostly the case.
Nice. Very nice, man. We only had your presence in the 850 for one day, and then as successes in big-time football, your presence is also fleeting. We miss you already.
I know, buddy, and I'd like to be there. My AC stopped working yesterday, and I am not going to stay in Tallahassee with an AC that's not working. That is impossible, and that's torture. So, I'm lucky enough to maybe have another place I can go to, so I went there. So I hate that I'm not in the studio with you, man. It's a real bummer. I want you to know that from the bottom of my heart, but I'm going to try to make it work anyway.
All right, man. That's all we need to know. So, Corey, you always have to be the sort of the moral compass or the conscience of this program because I lack in several areas. So I'm going to be going up to Atlanta later today with Michael Langston as part of this Rivals.com 5-Star Challenge. It's an exclusive event that's hosted and sponsored by Rivals.com, which the WarChant.com family is part of. And I like recruiting. I think both of us have, shared some stories about how we got our sort of interest or how we discovered WarChant. I think most of it kind of centers around recruiting to some certain extent. But I don't know. I feel like, if recruiting's gotten worse to a certain degree. I thought it was going to get better with Twitter and social media because it felt like a lot of these kids would kind of wait to the last minute so that they could announce on signing day and have a big ceremony, television, satellite, all that stuff. But a lot of folks now are cool with just tweeting it out and being done with it. But then other kids play the game, as they call it. They play the game. So now this is me. This is why I can't get into it either, because these kids are annoying, kind of. And then if you call them out for being annoying, then everybody's like, dude, they're just kids, man. What's your problem?
Okay, well, what's the annoying part?
Well, how do you not know where you want to go after you've been to everywhere? And why do you say you want to go somewhere and then the coaching staff stays the same, nothing changes, but then all of a sudden you're like, never mind, or this one kid, I don't want to call him out, but the one kid that committed a few weeks ago, the kid committed and then told, I think, a local television station that, Florida State's not his leader. He doesn't have any leaders. You committed, though, man. Michael Langston cleared it up a little bit yesterday on the program, but I don't know. Just I got to go talk to all these kids later today. And the whole point of recruiting is so you can know where these kids are going to go to school, but none of them are going to tell you anything.
Well, there's a lot of off-the-record type stuff when it comes to recruiting and reporting on recruiting, because I think Michael Langston and guys like that, they're a lot of times, I don't know, maybe not Michael, but I do think that a lot of times they'll have a real good indication that the kid is going there, and they would somewhere, and they'd be stunned if he went somewhere else. But there's also one of the weird realities about recruiting, reporting on recruiting, it seems to me, is that it's the only big time industry in the media, in sports writing, whatever it is, a fraction of the industry, where you don't want to spoil the kid's moment.
Oh, stop that! That.
No, I think that's what happens. I'm not saying you don't that should happen. I'm saying that's what happens. A kid wants to announce at his school in 2 weeks, but you know where he's going. But because you've developed somewhat of a relationship with him, or maybe the coaches might be like, don't do that. Don't spoil the kid's moment. That's what happens. I think a lot. They know where they're going. I think a lot of the reporters kind of know where they're going. But, he wants to announce it at his home, or he wants to announce it with his grandmom there, and you want to give him that moment without taking all the drama away. Right. I think that's part of it's a weird – I know reporting is kind of I don't know. It's not a niche. Well, it is a niche when it comes to sports writing.
It's an oxymoron. We're not reporting anything, really. I mean, I'm going to go do all these stories on all these kids. I'm going to sit down and talk to them, interview 12 kids. They're going to tell me nothing. Nothing.
Well, but you could get a feel for if they're into it.
Well, no.
You can use your male intuition.
We went on the spring tour, and one of the kids we spoke with, like down in South Florida, I'm like, dang, he sounds like he's ready to commit to Florida State like tomorrow. And then now I think he's leaning towards Miami. He's leaning towards Miami and hasn't even mentioned Florida State in any recent recruiting updates. Like, what has happened between late April and late June to where you're talking about them with like these sort of, reverent tones and just like you're in love when you're on campus. Everything is perfect. And then they don't make your top 5 when you talk to another person. And again, like I know I'm probably coming off as some sort of jerk, but this is why I just can't get into it because, and then a large part of this
too. Sounds like you're going to have a real fun week.
I know, right?
Atlanta.
Like, hey guys, how are you, man? Let me sit you down here and mic you up, and then sit down and spend 3 hours, editing a video and making you look really cool and articulate and. But you can't even tell me, like, yeah, I'm going to go to Florida State probably.
I feel like this is a good opportunity to tell the listeners we're still running that free 30-day trial at warchant.com.
5 weeks.
You get a lot of really good. You do get a lot of really good content for a really good price, a really fair price. I think it's time to sign up, and you'll see what Aslan's talking about.
It's actually, since it's the 5-star challenge, it's a 5-week trial, so it's 35 days. Right. So you get 5 more days as opposed to the usual 30-day, promo. So go ahead, check that out on wordchant.com side. Because listen, the stories that we do, I don't know how much there is to glean from these things, but like Michael knows what's going on. He does. So when he posts his updates to the message board, that's like real true insight into what's going on. And that's the kind of stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else, and that no matter how cool I edit a video and make a kid look super cool, you're not going to get the kind of information that you'll get from Michael when he posts stuff on the boards to kind of fill you in on things. Again, the promo code is 5-star, but it's the number 5, not the word 5, the number, the numeral 5, and then star. It's all one thing. Part of me
like
too,
like a line across, a line down, and then kind of like a half circle there at the bottom. Right for the 5.
What are you talking about? You're being too clever for me.
I was doing the geometry of what a 5 looks like. The number 5.
Right, okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Crooked number.
I did it with my hand as I was saying it.
How about this, Corey? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's June 27th, and we got to figure out a way to survive all this. Like, can you remember a kid who was what you would call maybe dramatic or vacillated a lot when it came to talking to different websites about where he was going to go to school, and then he ended up being a really good prospect? Because
when you started that rant, and I don't say that dismissively.
It's okay.
Or as a pejorative, it was a well stated rant. I feel like it came from the heart, but I think that's the correct word for it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and I was wondering, like, the guys that do go back, not the guys that. I don't think it's necessarily the guys that that I would want to look at that really do have changes of heart or do go back and forth a lot. I mean, Telvin Smith did. I mean, legit, he committed to Florida State, then had to have another signing day ceremony, not a signing day ceremony, but another commitment ceremony where he recommitted to Florida State. And then the day of, Jimbo Fisher still wasn't sure he was coming to Florida State. There was still some drama whether he'd go to Georgia or not, and he turned out to be pretty good. Buster Davis, I think, waited 2 or 3 months after a signing day, and it was between Florida State and Ohio State, and he had a nice college career. I think that does happen, but I think those guys are legitimately torn.
Yes.
The ones I'd like to inspect are the ones that know where they're going but play the game just to play the game. Like, they knew all along they were going to Florida, or they knew all along they were going to Florida State, but they pretended like they were interested in these other schools just to build the drama. Well, what kind of players do those guys end up being?
Yeah,
if they're not good right away, because they're obviously used to the drama, they like the attention, and I get it. I would like it too if I was 16 or 17 years old. I can see how it would get old after a while, but initially I would embrace it, and it would be awesome. But I wonder those guys that know where they're going all along, but they feed the system just to get stories written about them, just to be quoted, just to have people go crazy when they announce. What are those kids? How do they end up being? What kind of teammates do they end up being? How hard do they really work once they get to college?
Maybe that'll be a story I can do when July rolls around. Because listen, I mean, take your 5 officials. I'm not saying don't take your 5 official visits. I mean, they're paid for. Go ahead, get the full experience of all these campuses, because you do need to weigh these things, out, and you need to deliberate over these things. It's a very important decision. I understand it. But these I commit to Clemson, nah. I'm going to Miami, nah. I'm going to Florida State, maybe. How does that happen? How do you get to the point where you're committing to every university in the conference, and then it's
buddy, who would you say is the best running back in Florida State history?
Dalvin committed to Florida, but then he
also committed to Clemson.
Did he? Did I just talk about that, or did I just subconsciously call out Dalvin?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
go. Sounded like it. Hey, Dalvin, that was Aslan talking. Corey Clark, you met me. We had conversations. Man, I loved your recruiting process. Thought it was great. Don't hold that against me. And you're really good. You run balls out. Everybody knows that, just like your boy Devontae Freeman. And so yeah, man, don't hate on Wake Up War Chant just because of my co-host. I think you handled the recruiting process perfectly.
All right, I'm going to timeout. We'll be right back. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Wake up! 97.9 ESPN Radio podcast radio show called Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. Corey Clark also part of the program. Show's brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Corey, we had the either or question earlier. Not earlier in this week, because the week's only 3 days old. I think it was probably last week we did it. Maybe we did it on Monday. So I gave you the football, baseball option, and you took football. So since it's again, it's June 27th. It's Wednesday. It's slow. Go ahead and pull the other question out the bag. Are you ready?
I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
All right. Do you have that kind of joy when Brady trots off the diamond? Do you exude that kind of excitement? And is that what makes Brady get up out of bed every morning and get onto the All-Star circuit because he wants to see that joy, feel that passion from his father?
Right. What I just displayed now when you asked me that question. Yeah, that's what keeps him going. That's what kind of drives him. He doesn't really care about himself. He wants to see that look in my face and that excitement when I go. He'll hit a big double, driving a couple runs, and I'll be like, "That a boy, Brady, way to go."
Yeah.
Awesome. That's what he lives for. That's what all kids live for, Aslan. Yeah. You'll find out when you're a dad someday.
Fatherhood, man. Can't wait. It's going to be cool. All right, so the either-or question. I actually have another one that's football-related, but we'll save that for maybe next week because it'll probably be another slow week.
Jesus.
I know, man. I'm just trying to generate all this content. Okay, so we did the football one. It was if you could listen to any sort of meeting that happened at Florida State football-wise, would it be when Jeff Bowden kind of got fired and they had to tell Bobby, or would you want to be there when everybody figured out that Jimbo wasn't going to come around? And then you, as always, went with option C and made up your own answer. I want to be there when John Thrasher was like, "You won't coach, dude. Beat it."
Right. Right.
So my other question here is, would you rather see Mike Martin win the College World Series in his final swan song, 2019, sayonara, gone, and then Florida State never wins another College World Series for the rest of your natural-born life, or would you rather see Meat win 3 rings in 15 years?
Man, I would say probably the latter.
Yeah.
If I had to choose, because I feel like if Meat is the head coach and they do go out there and exercise all the demons and win a few, I do think Mike Martin Sr. will get real, genuine pleasure from Florida State winning a national baseball championship. It won't be his. It won't go on his record, but it is still his program, and it's his son that won it. So it's still in the Martin family. And I think that would be I think he would get real joy out of that, and he would treat it as one of his own, even if it wasn't technically one of his own.
All right, look at you, staying between the lines. I'm proud of you. You know,
that's a seems like a legitimate answer, right?
Yeah, it's like if I would ask that on some of the headlines, would you guys have been like, "Oh, good question from our elite headliner, Aslan, or is it Aslin?
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce his name."
Yeah, I think we would. I think that's a good question. That's a good question. The most people on headlines these days, man, they're all about the jokes, which they're funny. Some of those questions are really funny, but they are out there.
Yeah, you guys.
It all started with the 3 duck-sized horses versus the 3 horse-sized ducks, or whatever it was.
Right.
Where people just went off the rails with their questions.
Yeah, you guys need to rein that stuff in. Stop feeding the crazy folks there. But
don't tell us what to do, Aslan.
You're true. That's right. I'll drive this show. I'll worry about the other one.
You just worry about woo. Yeah. You don't have to worry about headlines.
They were talking about on Sports Center, and I forgot in what context, and I'm going to probably botch the whole line here, but it was something that one of their former anchors had said, Bill Pito, who actually looks a lot like Neil Everett, which is really bizarre, but that's neither here nor there. But he said that I think the quote was something along the lines of 2 is more than just 1 better than 1. Or something like that. I really screwed it up there. But basically saying, obviously the number 2 comes after the number 1, so it's 1 more than the number 1, obviously, in value. But just the overall sort of emphasis or vindication you get when you won the second championship, right? Like, if you just win 1, it's like, all right, but if you win 2, it's like, oh, you're really legit. Like Drew Brees, like Peyton Manning had that for a while until he finally got that last one, despite the fact that he played absolutely terrible in the Super Bowl, But I mean, I think like Mike Martin, that does not apply to Mike Martin, though. Because I think if Mike Martin can just get 1, if he can just get 1 single friggin' ring, it'll be awesome. And I don't know, man.
It'd be a neat moment, too, right? In his last season to finally do it.
And it would have to be something spectacular would happen for it. It wouldn't be like they would just show up to Omaha and win 5 games and just get on a plane and come back to Tallahassee with the trophy. No,
they would lose their first game because they always do. And then they'd be down 5-1 in the 9th and somehow come back and win. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, that never happens for us. We usually, when we're down in Omaha, we lose the game. So let's ride this wave. It'll be something like that. Just like, again, I bring it up all the time, but when the Red Sox finally won the World Series, they had to be 3-0 to the Yankees and do something that never been done before to finally exercise that demon or that curse or whatever you want to call it.
Man,
by the way, I think I got to because 2 is better. Whatever that, I don't know what the quote is about from the great esteemed Bill Pito, but 2 is more than 1 because it's twice as much as 1. Like when you go from 2 to 3, hey man, that ain't twice as much. That's just 1 extra one. But getting from 1 to 2, you've doubled your championship total. So I do think I think there's credence to that. That it feels much bigger from going from 1 to 2. Like when LeBron won his second one. To me, that was a much bigger deal than when he won his – well, I don't know because it was such a crazy championship he won with the Cavs. But his legacy was already cemented when he won the second one.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, like if Bobby
not really,
I mean, I don't know. Would we have looked at Bobby any differently if he had won, if he would have beat Tennessee? If his starting quarterback didn't have to get his neck splayed and fuse back together or whatever? Or if –
well, yeah, but he did need that 99 one.
Oh, for sure.
I think. I mean, I think he definitely needed it to cement his legacy. Obviously, he doubled his championship output with 1 win, and that they should have won more. Quite honestly, in that 14-year run, and if the playoffs had been around back then, they would have. But they weren't, and they just they got kind of unlucky a few times, and he didn't coach well in a few big moments and big games at times. But that second one was a really big one for his resume and his legacy. If he'd have gone 14 years and only won 1, it would have been like the Braves. Bobby Cox, it's held against him that he only won the 1 time.
See, I'm not.
If he'd have beaten the Yankees one of those times, it would have been, I think, his legacy's viewed much more favorably.
See, I'm just not, I guess maybe I'm not a stitch head or whatever. Like, I don't know how much different I'd think about Bobby Cox if they had beat, I don't know, the Twins in 91 or whatever. I don't know how much different I'd really feel about it. I mean, they got. I mean, I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as the Bills.
Right? To only win 1 of 14 times. I mean, just like Florida State, Atlanta went to the postseason 14 straight years. They won 14 straight divisions, and they only won 1 championship. So that seems like a.
But it's not like they went to the World Series 14 times in a row, though.
No, but they were in the postseason 14 times in a row. And I think they went to the World Series. I mean, I could think about it real quick, but I think they were 1 of 5. They went 1-4 in the World Series, maybe 1-5.
Did they ever play the Blue Jays?
Yeah, they lost to the Blue Jays. Who was it? Jeff Reardon gave up a pinch hit home run to the great Ed Sprague. That ruined that series.
I remember that.
And
Twins.
They lost to the Yankees when Wohlers hung a slider to Jim Leyritz in '96.
Jim Leyritz.
And then they lost to the Yankees again in, I think, '99. They weren't going to beat that team. They got swept. But so really, the Twins one could have gone either way. The Yankees one really bothers me. So does the Blue Jays one, quite frankly. But the point I always bring up, and I know this isn't wake up Braves fans, but although they do the war chant Braves game, so we could make this a combo Braves/Florida State podcast and radio show.
I mean, heck.
But if Bobby Cox would have had Mariano Rivera for that whole run, like Joe Torre got to have, well, then Bobby Cox would have won 3 or 4 more championships. They never had a great closer. They had Mark Wohlers, who was a good closer for about a year and a half before he couldn't throw strikes. It's such a great – and I talked about this with Florida State, that they've had some good closers over the years, but they haven't had – maybe Benincasa was the closest one. Even Jameis he didn't pitch a ton.
Yeah.
Like Florida, like O'Sullivan got to use what's his name?
Byrne. Yeah, that Byrne kid's a freaking stud.
Anytime it was a close game in the 8th inning, that kid's coming in and getting him 6 or 8 outs, whatever he has to do. Florida State hasn't had a guy like that. And heaven knows the Braves, if they would have had Kimbrel, if Kimbrel would have been born 10 years earlier, they would have had 2 or 3 more championships. They just never had a lights-out, all-star, incredible closer, and it cost them in the postseason repeatedly. A lot of heartache for old Corey Clark in the 90s.
Yeah, it gives you perspective. Makes you appreciate the sunshine when there's a lot of rain, you know? It's like living in Seattle or something.
Well, you got to put up with the rain to get a rainbow.
That's what
the
they
great
say.
Dolly Parton said that.
Really?
Yeah. People think she's just a big pair of
Oh, my
but she's more than that.
All right, let's mark that down for the edit log so we don't get fined. Let's step aside for a commercial break. We'll try to get back on the football track of things. Wake Up War Chants, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Welcome back, folks. Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio. Show's brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Corey, there's a couple questions that we got from folks, or not questions, but comments regarding a conversation we had yesterday that we'll get to in the final segment of the program. But we're now 68 days away from kickoff, 68 days away from Florida State football beginning the season on Labor Day, Monday against Virginia Tech at Doak Campbell Stadium. And I keep screwing this whole countdown thing up. So we were supposed to do my idea was, and when I say we, I'm saying my idea that I'm not executing because you're just here to give your knowledge and your wit, was that we were going to give nicknames to the kids on that specific day. But like I started off with, all right, we'll go and do the whole cliche, who's the best
this
number.
Stuff is always changing.
I know. I'm just like switching the goalpost. So we're 68 days away, so there's no 68 on the roster. But I joked the other day of giving a nickname to Landon Dickerson, and somebody on Twitter was like, dude, no, stop doing that. I called him L Dicks, like, because you said it jokingly one day, and I'm like, that's funny, so I'll just perpetuate the joke. But the guy thinks we're actually serious. So I don't know. Landon Dickerson, I don't know. I'm just calling him the Boy Scout maybe, because I think he was like an Eagle Scout.
They call him the Eagle Scout.
Do they call him? I don't know. Eagle Scouts. I don't know. I think Boy Scout's like funnier, or like.
You know who else was an Eagle Scout?
Who else was an Eagle Scout?
Charles Whitman, who was the guy in 1966 that climbed to the top of the Texas Tower on the University of Texas campus and just started shooting people.
Oh, my gosh, dude. Why? Why, Corey?
Well, in fact, he was the youngest Eagle Scout in history at the time. He became one, I think, when he was 12 or 13. I did a report on him in college and for a public speaking class, and so I just remember that. August 1st, 1966. And there is a great documentary that's currently on Netflix called The Tower. Okay. So if people care about my recommendations, it's not an uplifting documentary per se, but it is really interesting, and it's really well done. It's half animated, half not. It's really bizarrely constructed. Not bizarrely, it's just unique. but it's really well done. So people, if you're looking for things to watch this summer, get the kids around, gather them around, and watch The Tower on Netflix.
I don't know if you want to do that because I actually sat down last weekend. You mentioned some show, Evil Genius, that was on Netflix. That I hate. No, wasted 4 hours of my life. I want him back.
Are you crazy? That was a crazy story.
This is my thing. There's no conclusion
about anybody in it.
Well, yeah, it was amazing. It was a crazy story. The fact that, it happened, in 2003 or something like that? And I had no idea it even happened. I never even heard about this, ever.
I hadn't either, but then they show all those clips, and it's like, man, this was a huge national story.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. it was talked about on CNN, on Fox News, and I had never even heard about it. But the thing is, there's no conclusion at the end of it. There's no, this is what really happened. You're still left to believe it. You're like, I don't know what happened. Did you ever listen to that podcast, S-Town?
Yeah.
My gosh, I drove up to Philadelphia for the NFL draft last year, and I listened to that on the whole way up from Alabama. And everyone's going, you got to listen to it. It's awesome. And I listened to it.
Do not diminish S-Town.
Dude,
there
was no conclusion. It was just here's the ending. The protagonists, the good people, nothing good happens to them, and the evil people succeed in the end.
But it was to me, what was awesome about it, and we'll get back to sports people, or you know what? Maybe we won't. It's June 27th. It started out as this, who done it almost, this rich kid in this town had gotten away with a crime,
right?
And you're gonna get to the bottom of it, and meanwhile it just becomes you peel back the layers off this incredible character, a guy that you wouldn't even believe if he was in a book or a movie. Just one of the most bizarrely fascinating people, a real person that you've ever even heard of, and just more and more layers got peeled back from that guy's life. I thought that was the really fascinating part. No, there wasn't a conclusion that was a life well lived, or someone got justice or their comeuppance or anything like that. But I thought it was a really fascinating look at that one person's life.
And in this moment of clarity, I now know why everybody gets mad at us when we don't talk about sports, because they're signing up for a sports show and we're talking about sports, and then we veer off into these tangents, much of the same way I thought I was getting to some sort of crime caper where we're going to solve a crime, and instead we end up they do a bio.
Yeah, they kind of pulled the rug out from under.
Yeah, they're like, never mind. Since we're already down here in Alabama, we're going to do 9 more hours and get to know who this guy was. Why?
Yeah.
Why, man?
It was good stuff. I enjoyed it.
Where's the pot of gold, Corey? Where's the pot of gold? Where's the treasure? Where's all the money? Where'd it go?
Well, there wasn't one of those. And folks, but don't let Aslan deter you. Go listen to S-Town if you haven't already. And you have to go watch The Tower. Good movie. Little dicey at times with some of the material because of what it's depicting, a real life event, tragedy that happened more than 50 years ago now. But still, really good movie, good documentary. Go watch it.
Is there an actual is there a bow on the end of it? Is everything wrapped up?
Tower. Yeah, because there is a hero that ends the shooting. There is a hero. There is a protagonist. There's obviously the madman, the Eagle Scout, former Eagle Scout up in the tower, but he does get killed by an off-duty police officer that zigzags his way.
All right, well, don't ruin it all away. Come on, don't spill all the things.
Spoiler alert, everyone.
Yeah, jeez, Corey. I think you'd be better at this stuff by now. All right, so Landon Dickerson, did you ever watch Star Wars?
Oh, yeah. What? Yes.
Well, what's the name of the guy? Isn't there somebody named Lando something? Isn't that a character, Billy D. Williams? I've never seen Star Wars, so you have to help me here.
Oh, man. Yeah, Lando Calrissian. We're going to call him Landon Calrissian?
I don't know, but maybe it's called Lando. Did Lando Calrissian, did he do anything cool? Did he have a certain move or a certain line or a certain piece of flair that he always wore that's clever, that's witty?
Well, he wore a blue shirt with a cape, and he kind of set up. Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back to get captured by by Darth Vader, but then he ends up redeeming himself in Return of the Jedi. He flies the Millennium Falcon and ends up helping blow up the Death Star again.
So he's like Judas, but then he makes good?
He does, yeah. He said he had no choice. Chewie didn't like him. Chewie tried to choke him, but he actually was a good guy, but he just, you couldn't really, one of those guys you couldn't really trust. And he really liked Princess Leia. He thought she was hot.
Well, instead of redemption, Dickerson? No, that one.
I mean, no, we can't. Let's just no.
So just the Boy Scout. All right. If anyone's got any better ideas,
Eagle Scout. If he was an Eagle Scout, that's a huge deal. That needs to be his nickname.
All right, I'll do some research on Eagle Scouts.
Or L. Dix. L. Dix isn't bad.
This is the thing that, so I went on my whole rant about, recruiting and trying to massage the egos of these young men. Like, people get upset about this on the message boards. Like, people will give like a nickname to a kid out of the blue or something. And I've seen like several people that will comment like, one of the creepiest things we do on this website is the need to give 18-year-old and 19-year-old kids nicknames. I don't get it. Like, what's the deal? And listen, I complain about a lot of stuff. Like, you're going to complain about that? Like, of all the things that we do on the message boards, that's the thing you're going to complain about. Guys are like sitting around giving a kid a nickname. And it's not even like they sit down like we're doing right now, and I'm poorly trying to brainstorm this out. They'll just give the kid like they'll call him by his initials or something, or like the first two letters in his first and last name and just tie it together. Like, why do we need to do this? Like, it's so stupid. Like, that bothers people? Why does it bother people, Corey?
Well, I don't know, but what bothers me is just how lazy we are with our nicknames in sports these days.
Yeah, see, I don't want to call him LD or something, I
hate that, man. Or KD. That's not a nickname, man. Yeah. It's all tied to the person's name or their number now. It's never like, back in the glory days of sports writing, it was like a sports writer's job to anoint someone with a nickname, like the Sultan of SWAT. Boom. Or the Say Hey Kid, or something like that. The Bambino,
the Bash Brothers,
and now it's that was a good one. The Splash Brothers is actually a pretty good one, but it's a play. It's a play on the Bash Brothers. Yeah. But like that guy, Magic Johnson got his name from a sports writer. We don't do that anymore.
Cadillac Williams got it from a local TV anchor in Alabama. Said that he ran like a Cadillac, and they call him Cadillac.
Yeah, man. See, that's cool. But heck, that was 15 years ago. Yeah. So now it's all just like
Well, people call like
Dalvin Akers will be Cam 3 or something.
Yeah, people would call like Dalvin Cook, they'd be like DC4, or like people refer to Francois as like D12. I mean, that's like a rap band. Come, what? Like what?
Yeah,
like D12?
His nickname, by the way, is obviously Parlez-vous Francois.
Yes,
and that's always going to be his nickname. And I'm not quite sure why it hasn't taken off yet. I think it's because he didn't play last year. But if he wins the job this year, we only refer to him as Parlez-vous.
Dude, if you were here, I would stop the program. I would go around the glass wall and I would shake your hand. But I will just verbally.
I tried it on headlines, and those guys just grimaced and said no.
Know. I mean, I love Ira and Jeff, but certain people can't recognize greatness. They don't yield to you quite enough. But that's why we created this program. This program really is just a vehicle for you to get more airtime because of the unjust sort of distribution of time allotment on headlines.
I think that's perfectly stated, and I agree. And that was the reason that I came over to War Chant, basically, is to get a bigger platform for all my witticisms and wonderful observations.
All right, more of that coming up after this. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio. It's Wake Up War Chant.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping. Folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living.
Closing up shop on this Wednesday edition of Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. I'm Aslan. Corey also here, a part of the program. Brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Corey, real quick, in case people don't quite know your vast knowledge of not only sports but pop culture, you said a comment earlier in the program that was a little bit crude, but that wasn't something that came off the top of your head. You actually were citing another work of literature, if you will.
Well, it was a work of pop culture. It was the British Office.
Okay.
It was like the last, I think it was season 1. It was a really good show, folks. I know if you're a fan of the American Office, the British Office is good too. And it's only 13 episodes total.
Oh, wow, really?
It's crazy. Like each season over there, I guess in Britain, is only 6 episodes long. So they had 2 seasons of 6 episodes each, and then like a Christmas special. And that's the whole run of the show. Yeah. 13 episodes. So anyway, that was how they ended one of the seasons, was him saying to get the rainbow, you got to put up a little rain. Right. And then he quoted Dolly Parton and said what he said about her.
But you have great respect for Ms. Parton and all of her contributions to American culture and society.
I do. And in fact, I've been to Dollywood. And I know a lot of people probably listening to this can't say that, but I went to Dollywood when I was like 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
And it was pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was 10, so I didn't know any better. Nice. But it was still pretty awesome.
A couple other things. We're actually going to get to football here, I promise. Just a couple other housekeeping things. We're not going to have a show tomorrow. We will maybe have a show on Friday, and by we, I mean myself and Michael Langston, because I'll be on the road with Michael. Corey, you can take off the rest of the week. You've done quite enough, man, with the whole –
I've done more than enough.
I mean, driving back and forth, man. Good grief, man. I can't believe the amount of miles you've logged in. I mean, maybe we got to call you like – I'm going to call you like Lincoln Hawk, like the guy over the top, the truck driver or something. Maybe I'll call you like I don't know.
Lincoln Hawk, Sylvester Stallone, that's his name?
Yeah, in that movie.
All right. Hey, that's great. I wouldn't have remembered that. I know he turned his hat around backwards when he was ready to arm wrestle.
It's like a switch. It's like a switch.
Yeah. So we'll probably do a program on Friday because we're anticipating that there's going to be some recruiting news that's going to go down on Thursday. So we'll catch you up on everything when you wake up on Friday. But no show tomorrow.
But you're not going to believe the kid even if he does commit.
Probably not. Actually, I've spoke to this kid. He seems like he knows what he's doing. And I think there is a certain level now. I think that if you're going to do this thing on TV or at a big function, like, yeah, you're kind of dialed in. But when you do the whole, like you just tweet it and you get some kid to Photoshop your face onto like the logo, it's like, we'll see. But like when you go on national TV and you do it, I feel like there's too much to turn back.
Right, I got you.
So, but anyhow, a couple things to talk about. Viewer or listener Steve tweeted at me saying the barbecuing only applies if you're making chicken or ribs or something upon which you are adding barbecue sauce. If you're making steaks, hamburgers, hot dogs, etc., you're just cooking out or grilling.
That seems like a good rule of thumb, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's
seems fair. That seems just like almost just commonsensical.
All right, well, let's not get carried away and make me sound like I'm silly for bringing that up.
No, you're not the only one. That's the thing that's never made sense to me is how people would say they're barbecuing when they're grilling steaks.
Yeah. And we have a listener on YouTube, Josh. He left us a note the other day. I didn't get to it, Corey. He said, just a sad note. The show, Just the 10 of Us, the main tapes have been lost and can never be seen anymore. The last network that owned the rights lost the main footage. So sad, was a good show. And yes, them daughters were a bunch of hotties.
I mean, the two old ones in particular were. One of them was on that. Remember that show Savannah? You probably don't.
I don't. No, I don't.
But she was something. But that I don't understand how that would even happen. So we can't watch that on YouTube or anything.
I don't know. That's what Josh on YouTube
Netflix
said.
Doesn't have just the 10 of us. That's too bad.
They lost.
That is sad.
Well, I mean, think about it. If all the shows you've seen on syndication, I mean, every show's come back from the dead at some point. I don't think I've ever seen Just the 10 of Us on TV Land or whatever airs old 80s sitcoms,
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't that big a hit, but it was big enough that, you'd think, well, what are you going to do? It was great while it happened. We got to live through it.
Hey, so let's do some conversation here on football. I almost meant to bring this up yesterday, but again, sometimes just in the, just need to go with things in the moment, but I'm always just so anxious about what we're going to do the next day. In this, it's not one day at a time, man. You have to think 2 days ahead of things. How am I going to keep everybody engaged? So we're 68 days away from kickoff. We talked about, and we try to imagine a world in which Willie Taggart loses the first game. He loses to Virginia Tech. What would happen? How big of a deal would that be? The question I pose to you, or maybe the statement I make to you, Corey, is I'm not one of these guys that ever got hung up on Willie Taggart's record. Career-wise, he's sub 500, right? Or close
like
to there.
47 and 50, maybe.
Yeah,
like 3 games below.
Again, that doesn't bother me. I understand what he inherited, what he built, and how he left places, and I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me at all. The one thing I do wonder, though, is in terms of I don't want adversity is a word that we use so much, and we need to find synonyms or something else. But you lose a game at USF, it's not the end of the world. You lose a game at Western Kentucky, it's okay. I mean, I think to a large extent, you lose a game at Oregon and things are all right. I mean, especially that first game, I'd be interested to see, not that things would snowball, and again, it's just one game, but Willie's never had to really deal with a huge game and sort of the ramifications of when you lose it. I think he might have lost to USF or UCF maybe one time, maybe his first year when he was at Tampa, but otherwise I think he dominated UCF. But there's no, I just wonder that's something I kind of thought about when we had that conversation yesterday is you can never quite prepare for that moment when you finally do have the big job and you are in the big game and then you don't win it.
Well, and I think, Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I can't. Did he coach in the Oregon State game last year?
Yeah,
Did
but
they
Oregon
win it?
State was horrible. I mean, Oregon State, I think, fired their coach mid season, or he quit on them or something. Yeah, they were awful. It was bizarre, and he ran it up. He ran it up bad.
Well, there you go, Willie. Do it again with your rivals at Florida State too. But I would say, I get what you're saying, because I don't think he's had to deal with, as Zook called it many years ago, the noise in the system that comes when you lose a game in a program like Florida State, or if you lose 2 or 3 games in a season, the noise in the system. Because even at Oregon, you're right, it's not to this level. It's not anywhere, quite frankly, it's not anywhere close to this level of interest in Oregon football as there is in Florida State football. How are his kids going to deal with it? How is he going to deal with the media writing about negatively about his program? That's stuff that we don't know. And I think he'll be fine with it, but I don't know. None of us could know. So that's something we'll see as his career moves along at Florida State, is how he deals with a tough loss. Quite frankly, Jimbo was pretty good at it until the end.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't doing a lot of it. If he had a good stretcher, it didn't happen to him a lot.
But even a couple of the losses, he had some crazy losses. The loss at NC State where Ponder fumbles at the 3 when they're about to win the game. The NC State loss that we talk about all the time in 2012.
They lost that game?
Losses. The what?
They lost that game, 12? I thought
they did. They did. They had a 16-0 lead, and then it kind of got away from there in the second half. It's a tough loss for Jimbo. But he always handled those things well. Now, that was the one where he talked about execution over and over and over again. Like, hey, we called the right plays, players just didn't execute. That wasn't the right message, but that was 2 days after the fact. Right after the game, he was great and blamed himself and said they'll get better and all that. And they typically did. He didn't have many losing streaks.
Did that game change you at all, Corey? I know that sounds weird, but in terms of like being a sports writer, because at that moment, as a fan of Florida State, as an alumnus, I'm like, this is just never going to happen with this guy. I wasn't saying fire him, but I was resigned to the fact that Florida State just was never going to get back on top after that NC State game. I'm like, we had a run. I wasn't maybe mature and old enough to really, truly appreciate it. And I'll just have to live with that sort of reality. But the fact that the next season he comes back and goes on to the best season maybe ever in college football history, like, did that at all change the way you look at games or value them or, talk about legacies and all that kind of stuff?
You talking about the NC State game?
Yeah, because how are you? I remember headlines like you guys talked about it for 47 shows straight. Like Cal Ripken was blushing.
Yeah, I actually wrote a column that week, and it's not because it was well written, but it's one of the columns I'm proud of because we had kind of killed him in the Democrat. We had 2 different columns kind of ripping the loss, which was warranted. It was a terrible loss, and he didn't coach well in the second half. And it was just an embarrassing way to lose. Not that you lost it on the road to NC State, but the way you played in the second half was in some of the things that happened that led to that loss were an embarrassment. But I wrote, I think that Thursday or Friday, like, look, it's not the end of the world. You lose games. They still can win the ACC. And if they win the ACC and get to the Orange Bowl, that is a really productive season at Florida State and a really good season. And I said they look like they're on their way to a 12 or 13 win season. And that's a good season. And I said you can't use one loss to judge this loss to judge a tenure. And I did think, I remember, so I just thought that there was a chance that they would rebound. I wasn't throwing in the towel and saying this guy's never going to get it done. I was looking at him side-eyed, like, come on, man. You can't keep losing these games. Is this just what you do? But I did know the talent on the team, and I thought there was a chance. You keep giving yourself enough opportunities. You keep knocking at the door. Eventually the door will fall over. And, they kicked it in the next year. I obviously had no idea that was happening. But I did think the program was getting better and better. And I know that people were disappointed that night in Raleigh. But I think anybody, even you, that was so disappointed, you had to see, okay, we're so much further along than we were 3 years ago. We are going in the right direction.
Yeah, but I still thought like national championship was just going to be an elusive thing. Yeah, listen.
Well, you were wrong.
I was wrong. What was that thing? So basically, you said you saw this coming. Because you didn't hammer him after the loss, so you were at peace with it.
I didn't hammer him like my co-hosts on Headlines did, or the people that wrote for the Democrat at the time did. I didn't hammer him to that extent, but yeah, man, it was a terrible loss. We all had real reasons to hammer him. But I didn't think it was the end of the. I didn't think it was the defining. I didn't think it was going to be the defining moment of the Jimbo Fisher era because you could tell how much talent he had brought in. That they were always going to be in the running for ACC championships. He had revitalized the program to the point where losing by 1 point on the road was a huge, stunning loss. They were number 3 in the country. He had gotten to that point. I just thought that even with that terrible loss, I didn't think it was 5 steps back. I thought it was at 1 step back, but that they could still get running again real soon. And they did, and I was right because I always am.
How about this?
Except about Maryland in 2013. They weren't as good as I thought they were.
And it's fine. I'm not going to hold that over your head because I was a little bit nervous. Listen, again, I was a guy that didn't think they were ever going to win a national title, so I didn't think they were just going to steamroll everybody. And I'm like, Maryland might actually come in here and be a little bit of a game opponent, a worthy adversary. But I didn't go on
to be the case.
I didn't go on a nationally published podcast and say it and then have it live in perpetuity. But it's okay. That's why we have this show. This rehabilitates your image as well, Corey, so you'll be all right.
Hey, I did. And the word that I used for Maryland, I never get credit for this, but the word I used for Maryland was I think they could be a problem.
Yes, correct.
But in August of that season, I know I said this on Headlines because I remember relaying the story on Headlines. We were the one open practice we got. I was watching the Florida State defense, and we were all watching the quarterbacks, obviously, but there was a play in the Florida State defense where Christian Jones was the defensive end. Telvin Smith was running somewhere. Jalen Ramsey was covering a guy going down the field, and LaMarcus Joyner came around the corner on a corner blitz or on a star blitz. And I remember telling to Ira, I'm like, man, this defense could be a problem, in a good way. This defense is going to be something else. So I called that one. So when I used the term "going to be a problem," I was 1 out of 2 on the season. I don't ever get credit for that one though. Everybody just wants to bring up Maryland.
In baseball, they'd build you a statue. You batting 500.
That's all I'm saying, my man. That's all I'm saying.
And just to kind of maybe, I don't know, bring it full circle as we land the plane here. It's not a game, but do you think maybe – I remember diving into some of the tweets, and that's never a good idea, at least when it comes to politics. If you see a political tweet, folks, don't ever click on the actual tweet and then see all the replies.
It's crazy.
It'll kill your soul. Nuts. It will kill your soul. But I wonder how much, I talk about, dealing with losing a game. You talk about noise in the system, quoting the great Ron Zook of all people. My goodness. Willie got hammered for leaving Oregon. And I think that bothered him. I think he feels that he didn't mislead anybody or he did it about as gracefully as you can do it. And I go back to this whole thing with the other guy that we had here. It's hard to leave jobs. It never happens smoothly. You're going to hurt people's feelings. But I think Willie got kind of hammered from the people back on the left coast. Even the people, the Oregonian, I think their calmness went all in on Willie, and it was basically calling him, basically saying he's a liar, more or less. And I wonder how much of that maybe has kind of primed him for what's ahead of him here at Florida State. I mean, we're not bracing for failure, but you're not going to win every single game, and you got to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think he handled it flawlessly in his introductory press conference. He essentially apologized to him and said, "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. It wasn't my intention, but this was a job that I just couldn't pass up." But yeah, I think his name is Cannizzaro at the Oregonian, the columnist. He's a great columnist, but I didn't necessarily agree with his take there. But I get it. The guy was saying many of the same things 12 months ago, and they're proud of that program. It's a good program. It's not Florida State, but it's a good program. And they don't think you should leave after a year. And that you can't say this is a dream job or this is where you wanted to be and then up and leave the first job you get offered after that. But obviously I had no idea that Florida State would come open either. So I don't think anybody in their right mind that doesn't have skin in the game could blame Willie Taggart for leaving for Florida State. But I did think of that introductory press conference, instead of just saying, Jimbo, I don't think mentioned really Florida State at all when he was in College Station. Willie Taggart made a point of thanking the administrators and apologizing to him and saying, "I'm sorry." And I think he was genuine because nobody really cared if he lost games at South Florida or, like you said, Western Kentucky. He had never felt that kind of backlash before, but he hurt people, and he knows he did, including those players and some of the kids that he recruited last year to come to Eugene, to follow him there, and then he bounces after a year. That's dicey, man. But he seemed to be, maybe it was just just a face he was putting on. But I feel like he was genuinely upset that he upset people. I think it did matter to him. But nobody with, like I said, nobody that's not fully invested in Oregon could blame someone for leaving Oregon for Florida State. But yeah, you're right. That was probably the first time he's faced that kind of backlash.
And hopefully it'll never happen again. He'll just keep
Probably
winning.
won't. Probably won't.
Corey, we're done. But do you want to leave folks with any sort of thoughts or musings that you have before we go?
Guys, just watch The Tower. I probably misspoke earlier. It's not really a family film, but it is a good film. It's it's really well done. Watch it. It's about an hour and a half. And then after that, watch a comedy. Watch The British Office. That's good too. And then also know that, and I think I speak for Aslan here even more than myself, that you mean the world to me. We love you, and we wouldn't. I don't know if I'd even want to get up in the morning if I didn't have this show to do, and that's because of you guys, the listeners. So keep plugging along. Love each other. Take care of yourselves, and be strong and be brave.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.